Picture this. The island famous for Bob Marley, Blue Mountain coffee, and pristine beaches might soon be known for something completely different. 7 billion barrels of oil sitting beneath its crystal clear waters. Today, we're diving into Jamaica's potential energy transformation, how recent discoveries could position this Caribbean paradise among the world's major oil producers, what the science actually shows, and whether this treasure beneath the waves could reshape the entire region's economy. By the end of this episode, you'll understand exactly what makes this discovery different from decades of failed attempts, and why environmental scientists are both excited and terrified. Let me bring in someone who's been following this story closely.
So we're talking about what could be one of the most transformative energy discoveries in modern Caribbean history. United Oil and Gas just completed their 2026 Seabed Geochemical Exploration Survey, and the results are pretty remarkable.
Wait, let's back up for a second. Jamaica's been looking for oil for how long?
Nearly 70 years. According to Wood Mackenzie's report, the first exploration well was drilled back in 1955. But here's the thing, only 11 wells have been drilled total, and the last one was in 1982.
That's wild. So they basically gave up for over 40 years?
Not exactly gave up, but the technology wasn't there. What's different now is the precision. They took 42 piston core samples from the seabed and found something crucial, thermogenic hydrocarbons.
Okay, you're gonna have to break that down for me. Thermogenic what now?
Right, so there are two types of hydrocarbons. Biogenic ones form from recent organic processes, basically surface level stuff that's not commercially viable. Thermogenic hydrocarbons come from deep underground, under intense heat and pressure.
And that's the good stuff?
Exactly. They found C4 and C5 compounds, butanines and pentanes, which are strong indicators of the kind of deep petroleum systems that generate commercial oil deposits. This isn't surface sludge.
So when we're talking about 7 billion barrels, that's not just some random number someone threw out there?
Well, it's important to be precise here. According to the Times Caribbean report, that's prospective resources, not proven reserves. But energy analyst Gaffney Klein estimates at least 2.4 billion barrels based on geological data.
Still, even 2.4 billion is massive for a country that's never produced commercial oil, right?
Absolutely. To put this in perspective, one target called Calibri is estimated at around 400 million barrels. That's double what Ghana found in its Jubilee field back in 2010.
And Ghana's doing pretty well with oil, aren't they?
They are. But here's where Jamaica might have an advantage: the water depth. Jamaica's drilling would be in 50 to 2,000 meters of water, which is much shallower than places like Guyana.
Why does that matter?
Drilling costs are way lower, risks are smaller, and it's quicker to explore. Plus, shallow water operations fit better with current environmental standards that big oil companies have to follow.
Speaking of environmental standards, I imagine there are some people who aren't thrilled about this discovery?
Oh, absolutely. Environmental groups like the Jamaica Environment Trust are raising serious concerns. A marine scientist quoted in the coverage said even a moderate oil spill could have devastating impacts on a tourism-based economy.
That makes sense. Jamaica's coral reefs and beaches are basically their economic lifeline.
Exactly. And the reefs are already under strain from climate change and pollution. The Jamaica Environment Trust pointed out that coral reefs aren't just tourist attractions, they're natural infrastructure that protects coastlines from storms.
So if you damage them with oil exploration, you're potentially making the island more vulnerable to hurricanes?
That's the concern. Plus, there's the fishing industry. The All Island Fisherfolk Association is worried about seismic surveys disrupting fish migration patterns.
Wait, what are seismic surveys?
Before drilling, companies use powerful underwater sound waves to map oil deposits. Research shows these can disrupt marine mammal behavior and fish spawning. One fisher representative said when fish move away from traditional grounds, fishers feel it immediately.
So you've got this potential economic gold mine, but it could mess with two of Jamaica's existing economic pillars, tourism and fishing.
That's the dilemma. But here's what's interesting. Jamaica is already trying to diversify its energy sector. Their National Energy Policy 2030 aims for 50% renewable electricity generation.
Hold up. They're pushing for renewables while potentially sitting on 7 billion barrels of oil? That seems contradictory.
It's actually a pretty smart strategy. They're hedging their bets. The government has been investing in solar farms like Paradise Park and wind farms like Wigton, while also exploring this oil potential.
So they could potentially export oil while using renewables domestically?
Exactly. And there's precedent for this approach. Look at what's happening in the broader Caribbean. The World Bank just released a report showing a dual-track outlook where oil producers like Guyana are surging while tourism-dependent economies are moderating.
Guyana's the success story everyone points to, right?
Yeah, they've had exceptionally rapid GDP growth since 2020 from offshore oil, rising fiscal revenues, improved external balances, declining debt to GDP ratio. It's been transformative.
But Jamaica's situation is different because they already have an established economy.
Right. Jamaica imports most of its energy needs currently. The IMF projects their 2026 GDP growth at just 1.5%. Oil revenues could completely change that trajectory.
What would that actually look like in practical terms?
Well, if even a fraction of those 7 billion barrels prove commercially viable, Jamaica could go from energy importer to energy exporter. That's a massive shift in trade balance and government revenues.
And the timing is interesting too, right? With global energy markets still volatile?
Absolutely. The page content mentions that major oil companies are already paying attention to Jamaica's underexplored basin. There's serious international interest.
So what happens next? When do we actually know if this is real?
The samples from those 42 piston cores are being shipped to Houston for laboratory analysis. United Oil and Gas CEO Brian Larkin called this the defining phase that could physically confirm the presence of thermogenic hydrocarbons.
And if the results are positive?
Then they move toward a drilling decision. The company mentioned they're working on a farm-out process, basically bringing in partners with the capital and expertise to actually drill.
How long does something like that typically take?
It varies, but we're probably looking at months to years before actual drilling begins, and then more time to determine commercial viability. This is a long-term play.
But the potential upside is enormous.
If proven commercially viable, it would position Jamaica among globally significant oil-producing nations. That's not hyperbole. That's what the Times Caribbean report specifically stated.
And the risks are equally significant.
Absolutely. Environmental damage, disruption to existing industries, the challenge of managing oil wealth responsibly. The World Bank noted that Guyana's success underscores the importance of building institutional capacity.
What do you mean by that?
Making sure oil wealth translates into broad-based inclusive development rather than just enriching a few. It's about having the systems in place to manage sudden resource wealth.
The classic resource curse problem.
Exactly. But Jamaica has some advantages. They already have established institutions, a diversified economy, and they're planning for this rather than being caught off guard.
Plus, they're not putting all their eggs in the oil basket with that renewable energy push.
Right. They're offering smart energy grants for solar installations, exempting solar components from consumption tax. They're building multiple energy pathways simultaneously.
So when you step back from all this, what's the real story here?
Jamaica is potentially on the verge of an economic transformation that could rival what we've seen in Guyana. But unlike Guyana, they're approaching it with existing economic diversity and environmental awareness.
The key word being potentially.
Absolutely. Those 7 billion barrels are prospective resources, not proven reserves. But the scientific evidence, the thermogenic hydrocarbons, the satellite-detected oil slicks, the geological indicators, it's the strongest case Jamaica has ever had.
And if it pans out, we're looking at a complete reshaping of Caribbean economics.
The World Bank is already talking about a dual-track Caribbean. Oil producers versus tourism economies. Jamaica could bridge both worlds.
Here's what this really comes down to. Jamaica is sitting at a crossroads that could define the next century of Caribbean development. They've got the science, the international interest, and crucially, the awareness of both the opportunities and the risks.
And unlike previous oil booms that caught countries unprepared, Jamaica is planning for multiple scenarios. Whether those lab results from Houston confirm commercial viability or not, they're building energy resilience.
The next few months could literally change everything. From reggae and beaches to black gold and energy independence, Jamaica might be writing a completely new chapter in Caribbean history.